The quiet click of the apartment door locking behind me echoed in the empty hallway, the air thick with the scent of fresh rain on concrete seeping through the building's vents. My heart pounded against my ribs, each beat a reminder of the skirt brushing my legs for the first time beyond these safe walls. Soft, unfamiliar, like a secret finally stepping into light. I wondered if this version of me could slip through the ordinary world unnoticed, or if one glance would unravel it all. Adjusting my bag strap over my shoulder, I forced one foot in front of the other toward the elevator, the hum of the building pulling me forward. But before that door clicked, I stood frozen in front of the full-length mirror in my bedroom, the one I'd angled just so to catch the late afternoon light filtering through the blinds. My reflection stared back, unfamiliar in the simple white blouse and knee-length navy skirt I'd ordered online weeks ago. Was this me? Or just borrowed pieces from someone else's life? The blouse hung a little loose at the shoulders, the skirt's fabric pooling slightly at my hips, and I tugged at the hem, questioning if it screamed disguise or whispered possibility. It didn't look wrong exactly, just tentative, like a sketch not yet filled in. Sweat prickled under my arms, making the blouse cling in places it shouldn't, a damp reminder of the anxiety building in my chest. I shifted my weight, practicing steps across the carpet, the low heels I'd chosen wobbling uncertainly beneath me. Each click of the heel felt too loud in the quiet room, too deliberate, as if my body hadn't caught up to the idea of moving this way. My legs, usually in jeans that hid everything, now felt exposed. The skirt swaying with a rhythm that pulled at something deep inside. Nervous, yes, but alive in a way I couldn't ignore. I remembered the package arriving that rainy Tuesday, the plain brown box on my doorstep when I got home from work. Alone in the apartment, I'd torn it open on the kitchen table, heart racing as I lifted out the blouse, then the skirt. The fabric unfolding like a promise I wasn't sure I could keep. The thrill had hit first, a spark in my stomach at holding something meant for this hidden part of me. But then the fear crept in, heavy and cold. What did it mean to wear them? Now. Not in the safety of night, but in the light of day. I'd folded them away in a drawer, telling myself it was just curiosity, nothing more. But curiosity doesn't explain the way my fingers lingered on the material, tracing the seams as if they held answers. I paused by the window, whispering greetings to my reflection, trying to soften my voice into something higher, lighter. Hi. How are you? The words came out strained, my throat tightening around the pitch that still felt foreign, like borrowing a tone from a stranger. I cleared my throat, tried again. Just a coffee, please. And this time it was closer, but the effort made my chest ache. What if it cracked in public, revealing the mismatch beneath? The mirror showed my lips moving, but the eyes looking back held doubt, wide and searching, as if even I couldn't decide who was really there. My hands trembled on the doorknob, cool metal grounding me for a moment as the weight of it all pressed in. Turning back would mean stripping it off, folding everything away again, hiding in the familiar lines of my old clothes and the silence of unspoken wants. But staying meant stepping out, letting this self breathe in the world beyond these walls. The apartment felt smaller suddenly, the air thicker, urging me toward the door. I smoothed the skirt one last time, felt the fabric settle against my skin. Not perfect, but mine for now. The elevator doors slid open down the hall with a soft ding, the building's hum vibrating through the floor, pulling me into its rhythm. I stepped forward, the carpet muffling my heels, the unknown waiting just beyond. The elevator descended with a steady whine, each floor marker lighting up like countdowns to exposure. My fingers gripped the strap of my bag tighter, knuckles whitening as the doors parted on the lobby level. No one there. Just the empty space and the faint echo of my heels on the tile. I crossed it quickly, pushing through the glass doors to the street, and the cool evening air rushed in, sharp against my bare arms and the exposed skin below the skirt's hem. It carried the distant rumble of traffic, horns blurring into a low roar that suddenly felt too close, too real, as if the city had turned up its volume just for me. Outside, the world pressed in. The skirt swayed with my first steps, a gentle whisper against my thighs that made me hyper-aware of every movement, the way my hips shifted slightly to balance the heels, the unfamiliar draft teasing the backs of my knees. I held my arms close to my sides, elbows tucked in like a shield, trying to guard the soft outline the blouse and skirt created, this new silhouette that felt both fragile and insistent. Each stride was measured, deliberate. I focused on keeping my knees together, avoiding the wide-legged gait that might betray me. The pavement felt uneven underfoot, every crack a potential stumble, and I wondered if the sway was natural or just another layer of performance. I scanned the street ahead, shadows from the streetlights stretching long across the sidewalk, twisting into shapes that played tricks on my eyes. A silhouette here might be a bush, there a lamppost, but each one made my pulse spike. Passers-by dotted the scene. A man walking his dog, leash taut as the animal sniffed at a puddle. A couple ahead, hands linked, laughing about something lost in the evening breeze. I braced for their gazes, expecting heads to turn, eyes to narrow in confusion or judgment. But they didn't. The man didn't glance up from his phone. The couple kept their rhythm, voices fading as they passed without a pause. It was as if I were invisible, just another figure in the flow. And that invisibility both terrified and thrilled me. The normalcy of it all sank in slowly, like the chill settling on my skin. Dogs barked from open windows, sharp and carefree. Neighbors called greetings from stoops, their words casual, wrapped in the ordinary hum of evening routines. The world moved on, without me at its center. No dramatic stares, no whispers trailing in my wake. It was just life unfolding. A car splashing through a remaining puddle, headlights cutting the dusk. The faint scent of street food wafting from a vendor cart blocks away. My breath came easier with each block, the initial tightness in my chest loosening as I realized the ordinary didn't halt for this version of me. It enveloped me instead, neutral and indifferent, allowing space to exist without question. By the time I reached the corner, the small victory bloomed quiet in my core. No incidents, no unraveling, just motion, steady and unbroken. My legs had found a sway, not forced but emerging, the skirt's fabric brushing like an old friend now rather than a stranger's touch. Breath evened out, syncing with the city's pulse. And for a moment the fear receded, leaving room for something lighter, almost curious. That's when I spotted the bus approaching down the avenue, its lights cutting through the gathering dark. A quiet pull toward the next hurdle, ordinary yet loaded with possibility. The bus lurched to a stop at the corner cafe, its brakes hissing like a sigh in the evening quiet. I stepped off, the doors folding shut behind me, and crossed the street with steps that felt steadier now, the skirt's hem brushing my calves in a rhythm I'd started to trust. The cafe's windows glowed warm against the deepening dusk, a beacon of neutral ground, somewhere public but not overwhelming, where I could test this self without the crush of crowds. I pushed through the door, a bell tinkling softly overhead, and the scent of roasted beans enveloped me, grounding and familiar, like an old habit I could lean into. I chose a corner table near the back, away from the entrance but with a clear view of the room, the kind of spot that felt safe, tucked in like a secret. The wooden chair creaked under my weight as I lowered myself, crossing my ankles instinctively, the motion pulling the skirt smooth across my knees. It wasn't graceful, exactly, just automatic, a small adjustment to keep everything in place. My bag settled at my feet with a soft thud, and I let out a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. The air in here warmer than outside, carrying hints of cinnamon and fresh pastries that made my stomach twist. Not from hunger, but from the sheer normalcy of it all. Steam rose from the coffee I'd ordered at the counter on impulse, curling warm against my face as I cupped the mug, the heat seeping into my palms like a quiet reassurance. The murmur of conversations blended into white noise around me, low voices overlapping, a laugh here, the clink of spoons against porcelain there. None of it directed my way. It was the cafe's own language, indifferent and alive, wrapping around me without pause. I glanced around, eyes darting first to the couple at the table by the window, their heads bent close over a shared notebook, her hand gesturing animatedly while he nodded, absorbed in whatever story she wove. They didn't look up. Their world was contained in that small space between them, untouched by mine. Across the room, a woman sat alone with a book, her fingers tracing the pages slowly, glasses slipping down her nose as she lost herself in the lines. She adjusted them without glancing around, her focus inward, and I wondered if she ever felt the pull of hidden layers beneath her steady exterior. No one else filled the space. A lone student, tapping at a laptop, earbuds in, oblivious. An older man nursing a tea, staring out at the street with a distant gaze. I was just another face in this mosaic, the subtle waves of my wig catching the overhead light without drawing a second look. The weight of it had settled comfortably now, not heavy, but present, like hair that belonged, framing my face in soft falls that didn't scream artifice. A flicker of relief stirred in my chest, tentative at first, like sunlight breaking through clouds. No stares lingered, no subtle shifts in posture to size me up. The room flowed on, accepting me as part of its texture. I sipped the coffee, the warmth spreading down my throat, chasing away the last chill of the street. It was black, simple, the bitterness grounding me as the fear of scrutiny faded into the background hum, the whir of the espresso machine, the rustle of a newspaper page turning. Doubt had clung to me like the earlier sweat, but here it dissolved, sip by sip, leaving space for something quieter. The realization that I could sit here, still and unremarked, without the world demanding explanation. My hands unfolded on the table, fingers relaxing around the mug, allowing the blouse's collar to rest soft against my neck, the fabric no longer a barrier, but a gentle hold. In this stillness, ease grew, a slow unfurling in my shoulders, my breath syncing with the cafe's easy pulse. It wasn't triumph, not yet, just the profound relief of being ordinary, of blending into moments that affirmed without effort. The barista called the next order from behind the counter, her voice cutting through the hum, nudging me toward my own small test. That call from the barista pulled me from my seat, the wooden legs scraping softly against the floor as I stood. My mug felt warm in my hand, half empty now, the coffee's steam having faded into faint wisps. I needed a refill, not just for the drink, but for the small act of speaking, of inserting myself into this space without shattering it. The counter was a few steps away, lined with pastries under glass domes, their golden crusts catching the light. But my focus narrowed to the woman behind it, her apron dusted with flour, wiping down the espresso machine with efficient strokes. I approached slowly, the skirt shifting against my legs, each step a reminder to keep my posture soft, shoulders down, the way I'd practiced in the mirror's unforgiving gaze. At the counter, I set the mug down, the ceramic clinking lightly on the wood. "Could I get a refill, please?" The words caught in my throat at first, a slight hitch that made them come out softer than I'd planned. Higher pitched, but clear enough to carry over the hum of the grinder. My voice hovered there, vulnerable, like a thread stretched thin. Would it hold? Or snap back to the deeper tone I usually hit behind? I tilted my head slightly, the practiced angle to soften my jaw, and waited, breath shallow, for the response that could confirm or crumble everything. She glanced up, her eyes meeting mine for a brief second. Dark, focused. No flicker of surprise or pause. "Sure thing," she said, her tone even, routine, as she reached for the pot behind her. No questions, no lingering look. Her gaze shifted back to the machine, pouring the fresh brew with a steady stream that filled the mug, the aroma blooming stronger, dark and comforting. She slid it across the counter, change unnecessary since it was just a top-up, and nodded once. "Enjoy." That was it. Simple, unremarkable. Like she'd said it 100 times that day to 100 faces just like mine. An internal surge hit then, warm and unexpected, like sunlight breaking through the cafe's shaded windows. No hesitation in her voice, no subtle narrowing of eyes or awkward smile that might signal she'd seen through the layers. It was quiet acceptance, wrapped in the ordinary exchange of coffee for words. And it settled in my chest, easing the knot I'd carried since the door locked behind me. I murmured a thank you, the sound steadier now, and turned back to my table, the mug warmer in my hands, the liquid sloshing gently with my steps. Sitting down again, I exhaled long and slow, the air leaving me in a rush that carried tension with it. The transaction lingered, not as a dramatic win, but as proof, tangible, steaming in front of me, that I could blend, that the world didn't grind to a halt or demand scrutiny. My voice had held, soft but sufficient. The tilt of my head had gone unnoticed, just another gesture in the room's flow. My body relaxed further, shoulders dropping, the blouse's fabric settling without the earlier cling of sweat. It wasn't fanfare, just the relief of passing through without a ripple. The ordinary, affirming in its indifference. Around me, the cafe ticked on, the clock on the wall marking seconds with a steady, unjudging rhythm, its hands crawling toward evening without hurry. Conversations dipped and rose. A spoon stirred sugar into tea nearby, the faint sizzle from the pastry warmer adding to the layer of normal sounds. No one had paused. No glances followed me back. I was part of the texture now. Unremarkable. And help. But the ease brought a new pull, a need for a moment alone, to face what this all meant without the buffer of noise. I gathered my bag, the refill half sipped, and headed toward the restroom at the back, the door's handle cool under my palm, the mirror waiting just beyond. The restroom door clicked shut behind me, a soft finality that muffled the cafe's hum to a distant murmur. The space was small, tiled in faded white that reflected the fluorescent light overhead, its faint buzz humming like a held breath in the quiet. I leaned against the sink for a moment, the porcelain cool under my palms, steadying the faint tremor in my fingers. The air here carried a clean, soapy scent, neutral and unassuming, a far cry from the coffee's warmth outside. My reflection waited in the mirror above, but I approached it slowly, deliberately, as if giving myself time to brace for what might stare back. Not a stranger. Not anymore. but something real, tested by the world's indifference. I smoothed the skirt with both hands, the fabric yielding under my touch, settling into the curve of my hips like it had always known the shape. Breath caught in my throat as I lifted my gaze, the full image coming into focus under the harsh light that washed away any shadows of doubt. There I was, the blouse's collar framing my neck softly, the wig's waves slightly tousled from the evening's movements, catching glints that made them look almost natural. My eyes met their own, wider now, softer around the edges, framed by the day's subtle wear, the faint smudge of liner that had held through sweat and nerves. They weren't masked. They were mine, holding a depth that the apartment mirror had only hinted at, deepened by hours of unremarked existence. It wasn't perfection staring back, no flawless lines or dramatic glow, but an undeniable fit, the subtle curves of the outfit aligning with something inside that had waited too long to surface. The light makeup I'd applied that morning, simple and sparing, traced my features without overstatement. A touch of color on cheeks that now bloomed with real flush, lips parted in quiet surprise. I watched my chest rise and fall, the blouse shifting with the motion, and felt the pull of recognition unfolding, slow and certain, like a knot loosening in my core. This wasn't borrowed. It was woven in. The lines and contours no longer fighting my body but resting against it, as if the ordinary hours had smoothed them into place. My fingers rose, hesitant at first, to touch the face in the glass, tracing the arch of an eyebrow, the soft plane of my cheek where foundation had evened the skin. The contact was light, almost reverent, the warmth of my own skin meeting the cool air between us. A tear welled then, unbidden, gathering at the corner of my eye and tracing a clean path downward, smudging nothing, but carrying the weight of realness. It wasn't sadness, not exactly, but release. The gaze staring back held no fracture, no hidden fracture waiting to split open. It saw me, fully, in the quiet truth of curves that fit just right, the subtle wear of the day etching lines that felt earned, lived. Emotion layered in then, thick and insistent. The fear that had clung like damp fabric earlier dissolving into something quieter, a truth that didn't need announcement. This self, tested in glances and exchanges, stood solid, not a costume fraying at the edges, but a presence that the world had let pass without challenge. My throat tightened, vulnerability lingering in the air like the light's buzz. But it was softer now, edged with certainty. I leaned closer, lips moving in a whisper. Lilly. The sound echoing faintly off the tiles, hesitant yet anchoring, as if naming it made the reflection breathe with me. It did. The eyes in the glass softened further, acknowledging the word like an old acquaintance finally recognized. I lingered there a beat longer, hands dropping to rest on the sink, the tear drying on my cheek without hurry. The mirror held no judgment, just the woman who'd crossed thresholds and found them yielding. Renewed, I straightened, the skirt falling into place with a familiar whisper, and pushed the door open. The cafe's familiarity rushed back, warm lights, murmured voices, a gentle anchor now, pulling me not toward hiding, but homeward, toward whatever came next in this unfolding quiet. Stepping out of the cafe, the evening had deepened into a soft indigo, streetlights flickering on one by one along the avenue, casting pools of amber that guided my path. The door swung shut behind me with a gentle chime, and I paused on the threshold, shoulders lighter now, the weight of the day settling not as burden, but as quiet accomplishment. The air outside felt crisper, carrying the faint dampness of earlier rain, and I pulled my bag closer, its strap smooth against the blouse as I began retracing my steps, the pavement familiar under the heels that no longer wobbled. The skirt's movement had shifted in my awareness, no longer a tentative brush but an extension of my stride, the fabric flowing with a rhythm that echoed my own breath, familiar, almost instinctive, like a limb I'd forgotten I had. It swayed against my legs without pulling focus, just there, part of the motion that carried me forward through the gathering dusk. The initial disguise felt distant now, peeled away by hours of unremarked presence. This was clothing, simple and lived in, holding the shape I'd given it without demand. Crowds thickened as I neared the busier stretch, people streaming homeward in loose clusters, office workers loosening ties, a family with bags from the market, their chatter blending into the evening's hum. I slipped into the flow, shoulders brushing occasionally but never halting, blending as seamlessly as the shadows lengthening around us. No one paused or turned. A woman hurried past with a phone to her ear, her voice urgent about dinner plans, oblivious to the figure beside her. The ordinariness wrapped around me like the cooling air, insulating rather than exposing, allowing me to move through it all as just another thread in the weave, unnoticed, unburdened. My mind replayed the cafe in fragments as I walked, the barista's steady pour, the neutral nod that affirmed without words, the couple's absorbed laughter, untouched by my presence, the mirror's gaze, soft and owning. Each moment built a soft assurance in my chest, layering like sediment over the earlier fear, solidifying into something I could carry. It wasn't bold declarations or knowing smiles, just the quiet proof of exchanges that flowed past, leaving me intact, seen enough to exist without spectacle. The day's neutrality had become its own affirmation, small and sustaining, turning what I'd feared as exposure into the simple act of being. A cool breeze stirred then, threading through the street and drying the faint traces of anxiety that had lingered on my skin, the subtle sheen from the cafe's warmth evaporating into the night. My bag swung easy at my side, its weight balanced, no longer clutched like a shield but carried with the casual sway of routine. The scent of distant rain mixed with exhaust and faint florals from a passing vendor, grounding the journey in sensory echoes that felt earned, present. The building loomed ahead sooner than expected, its outline familiar against the sky, the key already in my hand, cool and reassuring. The secret that had pressed heavy this morning was lighter now, shared only with myself in the quiet spaces between steps. No longer a fracture, but a quiet integration, held close without strain. I approached the entrance, the glass doors reflecting my silhouette briefly, soft and unremarkable. Unlocking the door, I stepped into the lobby's hush, the elevator waiting like an old ally, ready to carry me upward to the apartment's quiet for one last turn inward. The apartment door clicked shut behind me, a soft seal on the evening's quiet, the familiar scent of my space wrapping around like a held breath released. I kicked off the heels in the entryway, the carpet yielding soft under my bare feet, each toe sinking into the fibers as tension unwound from my arches. A slow melt that traveled up my calves. No more wobble, no more measured steps, just the grounding pull of home, pulling me deeper inside, where the light from a single lamp cast warm pools on the walls. I moved to the bedroom without hurry, fingers working the buttons of the blouse, peeling it away layer by layer, the fabric whispering as it slid from my shoulders. Each piece came off with care, the skirt unzipped and folded over the chair, its navy folds carrying the faint trace of street air and cafe warmth. The wig lifted gently, strands brushing my fingers before setting it on the dresser, my own short hair falling flat against my scalp, a return to the unadorned. It wasn't stripping away a disguise, exactly, but honoring the day's unremarkable success. The way these elements had held me without fanfare, allowing passage through the world as if they were always there. Curled on the couch now, legs tucked beneath me, I let the stillness settle, the apartment's hush broken only by the distant hum of the fridge. My mind replayed the fragments again, not as highlights, but as the quiet thread of ordinary interactions. The barista's nod, the couple's oblivious laughter, the mirror's steady gaze. Each one affirmed without effort, without the weight of recognition or rejection, just the profound freeing of being another person in the room, seen enough to fade into the background. It washed over me, this relief, not in waves, but in the steady drip of realization. The secret I'd guarded so tightly wasn't shattered by exposure, but softened by indifference, turning fear into the simple space to breathe. Looking inward, the secret evolved in that moment. From a hidden fracture, sharp and isolating, to a quiet comfort woven into everyday rhythms. No grand revelations, just the forward glance at tomorrows holding more such affirmations, small and sustaining, like the coffee's lingering bitterness on my tongue, or the skirt's echo against my skin. It felt foreign and impossibly natural, this shift. My throat loosening as I traced the faint outline of the day's flush on my arms. The body beneath no longer at odds, but aligned in the hush. The folded fabric lay nearby on the armrest, carrying the faint scent of coffee mingled with rain-damp concrete, a sensory echo that grounded the evening's close. My stomach turned to static for a beat. Not anxiety, but the curious flutter of what came next. More outings, perhaps, in this quiet certainty. I didn't know what it meant yet, fully, but the resolve settled in my chest, steady as the lamp's glow. Tomorrow held more, unforced and ordinary, each step a small, sustaining truth. The apartment light dimmed slowly, my reflection in the window a soft outline against the night. Possibility etched in the curve of my shoulder. Relief washed over in the knowledge that ordinary moments could hold such quiet power, affirming without a word. If these stories resonate, subscribe and turn on notifications. You won't miss the next intimate share.